Show ya, Nigeria, Bioko Island, Liberia, I wanna know ya, Cameroon, Guinea-Bissau, Sierra Leone, gotta let me show ya, Nigeria, Bioko Island, Liberia, I wanna know ya, let it all hang out.
Hey everybody, 2 weeks in a row. I don't know what's going on with my intro music. Hello and welcome. Welcome to African Ancestry Live. Our groove got cut short, but it's Wednesday. It's March 17th. We are well into the month of March. I'm Gina Page. I'm the president and co-founder of AfricanAncestry.com, and I'm so happy to be with you here tonight. Welcome to everybody who's joining us on StreamYard. On Facebook and on YouTube. I'm so glad to have you come on in. Hey, Rashida, good to see you. There's everybody. Hey, Hazelette, Vicky's here. Karen in the house. We got Plachette representing for Nigeria and New Orleans. Kathy's here. Welcome, welcome. Glad to have you all here. You all know that how we do at African Ancestry. We are the pioneers of genetic ancestry tracing for Black people around the world. And we are on a mission to transform the way we view ourselves, Black folks, and the way we view Africa. And so we do that. Our contribution to that work is by reconnecting you to Africa through your DNA. Talked to a group of students in Richmond, Virginia yesterday, and they'd been doing all this genealogy research, and African Ancestry's work complements genealogy research. You know that as Black folks, we can look at all the census records we want, all the marriage records, death records, military records, but eventually we hit a brick wall because we were not recorded as human beings with names and lives and families until the 1870 census. That was the first federal census that included Black people. And so when we want to know where we came from before Virginia or New Orleans or Los Angeles or Mississippi or Haiti or Guadeloupe, we're going to hit a brick wall because there just aren't any records. And that's where African Ancestry comes in. We bridge the gap between where you know your line, your mother's line stops, and where it was prior to the transatlantic slave trade. Hey, Avanti's in the house. Nikki T is here. Okay, King Joseph, welcome. Linda's here. Charles, I'm always representing the Mende people. Hello, Cam. Thanks for being here. Betty and Kendall. Okay, St. Louis. Avanti, Cam, K-Cam. I'm trying to be cute and I have on my glasses. Naisha, hello. Carol Collins, hello. Kendra Lou. Jane Bronner, good to see you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, Linda, I think I said hey to everybody. Come on in here and get comfortable because we have a phenomenal woman with us tonight. I hope you all saw on Facebook or on YouTube, Dr. Georgia M. Dunston is our guest tonight, and I can't wait to tell you all about her. Mary Smith, Tio, Herman Baker, good to see you, Herman. Thanks for being here. Our Cafe Cubano, welcome. Kalechi's in the house. Hey. So it's Women's History Month. We've been celebrating women all month here at African Ancestry. If you check out our social media, you can see some profiles of some incredible women. And this is really, the months they just stay energetic. First, we're celebrating Black people. Then first we start off in January celebrating Celia Cruz and all things Cubano. And then we moved into celebrating all Black people. And now we're continuing the party celebrating Black women. So we are in a unique position to be able to do this. And I'm just so excited. I am well. Thank you for asking, Joseph. Hey, Sydney. We got Bowie, Maryland in the house, some neighbors. I was in Upper Marlboro today. Had to drive past Bowie. May's here. Oh, we got the UK in the house. All right. The UK, Texas. I love it. We got an international Azucar. That's right. Azucar Cafe Cubano and Nikki T. Okay, so I'm just so excited. Let me stop. Let me tell you all about our guest. So I met our first guest, our guest tonight a long time ago, back at the beginning, the origins of AfricanAncestry.com. And when I met her, I had no idea that she was the first African American in America to receive a PhD in human genetics. When I tell you we don't play at African Ancestry, I'm not kidding. We're bringing you tonight the first African American in America to receive a PhD in human genetics. And she's a Black woman. Dr. Georgia M. Dunston, she was born in 1944 in the segregated small South Atlantic Tidewater city of Norfolk, Virginia. We got any Virginians in the house? I know we got Dallas. Dominic is Dallas, representing Dallas. We got Rockford. Oh, Pastor Copeland in the house. Hello and welcome. Shout out to Pastor Kenneth Copeland. We traced him to the Yoruba people living in Nigeria today. Jackie's here. Oh, we got Win Payande in the house. We're having a reunion here. I'm loving every last bit of it. Jackie Stanton's representing for Virginia. Okay. All right. So she's your kinfolk from Norfolk, Virginia. Her parents were working class African Americans, Ulysses Dunston and Rosa Barton Dunston. Well, Dr. Dunston is, I mentioned, she's a PhD in human genetics. She is the founder, president, and CEO of the Whole Genome Science Foundation. She's going to tell us all about what that is. She is a lifelong spiritual science seeker. And you know, we've been talking about mindset this week. We talked about it with Coach this month. We talked about it with Coach P. We talked about it with Arisha last week. She is an author and a scholar. She is a professor emerita at Howard University. She's the founding and former director of the National Human Genome Center at Howard University College of Medicine. And that should be familiar to many of you because that is where Dr. Rick Kittle, our co-founding scientist, cut his teeth. She is a believer in the one almighty sovereign living God, the Father of glory and creator of the universe. And she is a committed co-laborer in living, experiencing, demonstrating, and decreeing the truth of Christ Jesus, the living word of God, and the reigning king of the human genome kingdom. I love it. Of God within, on earth and in space, the Lord of all creation. It is an honor. When I tell you it's an honor to have Dr. Dunston with us, I am not kidding. Yes. Okay. Anissa's here. CT Durbin's here. Kiki's here. May's here. Tabitha's here. Kendra's representing for HU, so we can get started. So I want to share a video with you all. It's a brief video to give you sort of a synopsis of Dr. Dunston's first decade of work. So let's check this out. I sure hope that you can hear it. Oh my goodness. I had a feeling that you guys weren't going to be able to hear this. Okay, hold on. I'm sorry. I think it's because I have my headset in. I need Wendy. Shout out to Wendy. I hope she's feeling better soon so that we can have the right technology and get it right. Okay, I'm going to try this again and make sure that you guys, because I really want you to hear this. All right, let's see. Okay, try one more again. Y'all my family, so you're very patient. I love it. I love it. I think I have to do it like this and share the audio. Yes. Okay, Gina. Act like you know. This is it. I think. Okay, we got it. Let's start it over.
The National Human Genome Center at Howard University.
Can you guys hear this?
Exploring the science of genomic information, coded in DNA sequence variation, expressed in population diversity, personalized in human identity.
Great, thank you.
I want the country that eliminated polio and mapped the human genome to lead a new era of medicine, one that delivers the right treatment at the right time. So tonight I'm launching a new precision medicine initiative to bring us closer to curing diseases like cancer and diabetes.
The human genome is the encyclopedia on life and healthy living. The human genome conveys the message of the living genome regarding life, spirituality, diversity, and healthy living through science, sequence, and society. Exploring the science of genomic information encoded in DNA sequence variation and expressed in population diversity. Knowledge that is now revealed in genome sequence variation, big data, speaks as an oracle on genomic information encoded in and expressed through all human life, past, present, and future. The mission of the National Human Genome Center in its second decade is to do the science and teach the knowledge gained from big data on DNA sequence variation and its interaction with the environment and the causality, prevention, and treatment of diseases common in African Americans and other populations of African descent, a natural experiment of nature.
So everybody, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Are y'all ready? I hope y'all ready. We're going to learn a lot tonight. Please, I want to see some hand claps. I want to see some fire. I want to see your African flags for Dr. Georgia Dunston. Welcome, Dr. Dunston. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
It's my pleasure.
I love that artwork in the background, all the colors. You have a wonderful background. Feeling a little, we're matching though, because we both have a red wall behind us.
Yes.
Yes, clap it up. Thank you, because we have, listen, I'm going to say it one more time. I might say it 5 more times. We have the first African American in America to receive a Ph.D. in human genetics. So, Dr. Dunston, we want to try and talk about a number of things tonight. But what did that feel like? What that journey, and then once you became the first African American to earn that distinction, what was that feeling like for you?
Oh, actually, I didn't realize I was the first back when it was going on. Certainly, I represent that I represent the generation where research and careers in research were just kind of being promoted in our schools. I had my formal training in historically Black colleges. I did my undergraduate work in Norfolk, where at Norfolk State University, where I was born. And from Norfolk State, I went to Tuskegee University, where I got a master's. And while I was at Tuskegee, I had a summer professor who was a visiting professor from the University of Michigan. And I took a course in biochemistry and a laboratory in biochemistry from this professor from the University of Michigan. He asked me what I was interested in. And I had a chance to share with him that I was really interested in genetics and human genetics. I told him that I really was not interested in studying model organisms because it wasn't genetics that captured my attention. I, since a child, was very interested in human differences, was very interested in why God made us different, and particularly why he made Black folk Black. You know, it was kind of one of the questions that I had growing up in the church. I was told to seek my answers to my questions from God. In fact, I used to ask my Sunday school teacher, my school teachers, I would ask them questions about why Black people were Black, what were the basis for the differences, and why. And I ask questions so often. I use it to tell this story all the time. My mother, out of sheer frustration of me asking her why God made me a woman, a girl, why he made me Black, why he gave me kinky hair, or why me the way I am. And one day, out of sheer frustration, she said to me, Georgia May, I do not know why God made you the way he made you. But I tell you what, you ask God, you ask him why he made you the way he made you. And because I kind of grew up in the church and that had been my orientation, I can truly say that God opened the path from undergraduate all the way through graduate education to meeting this professor at the University of Michigan. And when I told him I was interested in human genetics, he said to me at that time, he says, there are only a handful of universities that offer the Ph.D. degree in human genetics. Many programs, genetics was blossoming. Lots of Drosophila, fly genetics, mouse genetics, worm genetics, all kinds of genetics. But human genetics, only a handful of schools, with the University of Michigan being one. And more than that, I think it's more than coincident. It's more than coincident that he told me, if you would consider coming to the University of Michigan and continuing your education, because I was working on a master's at Tuskegee, and that was the highest degree at Tuskegee. But he says, you're a good student, and if you would consider, I think you should consider going for the terminal degree, the Ph.D. degree. And if you are interested in human genetics, where I am, my university is one of what you can count on one hand, so less than 5 at that time. And he says, my department is right across the street from the Department of Human Genetics. And I know the chairman of that department personally. And if you would consider coming to Michigan and working on a PhD, and this was at the time where there was a push to integrate the major research universities. A lot of the activity was going on the undergraduate campus, but and at Michigan they had the Big Bam with Black Action Movement. But this was the time when there was a lot of activity with Blacks getting onto major universities. So it was timing that was coming together at this time, the area and timing.
Can I interject here for a second? Because there's so many lessons just in this little bit that you said for all the parents and grandparents that are listening and watching us tonight. her mother sparked this for her in some ways. I mean, she already had the natural curiosity, but her mother sort of gave her the freedom, gave her the push to explore the answers to her questions. I think that's very powerful. The other thing that's very powerful is you are a pioneer. You not just because you're the first PhD, but the fact that you even, I mean, there was nothing called STEM back then. There was nothing about advancing African American participation in STEM fields and in STEM departments in universities. And you are the quintessential STEM leader. And so I just want to honor that. I can't even begin to imagine. I went to University of Michigan in 1990, which was much after you were there. And people like you paved the way for us to be able to have, you know, the largest Black class, the largest number of Black students at Michigan Business School. So I just want people to make sure you caught some of these nuggets. And today we talk about genetics like it's nothing. We talk about human genetics. We all think that we know a little something about human genetics. And it's a field that didn't have Black people in it until you set foot. So my mind is blown, and we haven't even gotten past your PhD, Dr. Dunston. but you have so much fascinating information, and we're getting all kinds of hand claps and yeses and HBCU love and Michigan love in the chat. People are loving it. Yes, Lisa says, let me show this. Lisa says, we are in the presence of greatness. This is incredible. Absolutely. And then who is this? Oh, no, Mary. Mary says, I've always told my children to ask why if they didn't understand anything, even when I said, because I said so. And they would definitely ask. I think we've all been on one side or the other of that answer. So Dr. Dunston, you got your PhD. You ended up over the years at Howard. You co-founded the Human Genome Center. That actually was where Dr. Kittles was when we started African Ancestry. So even though you didn't play a direct role in the founding of the company, you were one of the angels around us that set the table, that let us thrive and still be here 18 years later. If it wasn't for you, we would not still be here 18 years later. But I know that you've done lots of work, and you are currently doing work in helping to, one, increase the participation of African American students in the sciences, in STEM. But you also are working on a project I thought was very interesting about helping or giving scientists a platform to communicate the value of the science that they're working on. And I wonder if you could talk about why we even need to have that platform for scientists to be able to communicate the value of what they're working on.
Okay, yes. And thank you for that opportunity. In moving from the establishment of the Genome Center at Howard, yes, indeed, our own Dr. Rick Kittles was key in setting up our molecular genetics laboratory. And I want you to appreciate that the significance of the Human Genome Project was sequencing our human genome. And the significance of sequencing the genome is it now allowed us to look at our inheritance at the molecular level. From the DNA makes protein, okay? DNA codes for protein. I like to say that the DNA has been referred to as the language of life by Francis Collins, one of the key founders of sequencing the genome. He has written a book called The Language of Life, DNA. And I mentioned that to say, I do consider the genome as the word on life. And because I love the scriptures, and because God does answer my questions through his word, and his word being the Bible, I relate the Bible to the science. And so the biggest science organization, I think it's the largest, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS. This is the organization that publishes the journal Science, which is well known among the scientific community. This organization was looking for research universities because we're dealing with those who involved in the research being the source of generating knowledge. I mean, research is your knowledge industry, if you will. So AAAS was looking for research universities where they could recruit scientists and engage scientists from research university in being ambassadors for their science, ambassadors in talking to the community about their science and why support for the science is important. So the whole idea was scientists who are usually excited. Most scientists are excited about their research. So let's get the scientists to talk to the community. Diverse communities is in now. So we need diversity, talk to diverse communities and try to have the scientists talk to the community about what they do and why what they do is important for the government to support this work. So kind of get ambassadors to get public support for the science. And this research project that AAAS was supporting had noted that there had been a study from the Pew Foundation that 85% of Americans, of U.S. citizens, actually consider themselves as religious in a study that was done. So you have a large percentage of the general population that self-identify as religious. And so the thinking was then it's important to relate, to speak to people relative to where their interests are. And so AAAS started this program called Dialogue on Science, Ethics, and Religion. This was very much close to that program that when the Genome Project, for example, first started, there was a small segment of support that was devoted to what was called ELSI, the ethical, legal, and social implications of the knowledge coming from the genome. So here,
hold on. Can I ask you a question, Dr. Dunston?
Yes.
If there's all this focus on the ethics around science, why is there still this sense that there's so little ethics when it comes to the science of us? What is this? Can you explain this?
Well, I think we also have to recognize that we have not had a main impact on as designers and planners, shall I say. We have been engaged in because historically we've been excluded. Like Howard was able to set up a National Human Genome Center because it was recognized that up to our point to the beginning of the third millennium, we were formed in 2001. The genome was completed in 2003. The first complete construct of the genome sequence was 2001. Up to our point, Black folk had not even been a part of this genome project, which had its beginning in 1990 and projected to be 15 years at the tone of $3 billion, because at the outset, this was the biggest biological initiative comparable to a physics initiative of putting a man on the moon.
And we weren't included. And we Black people were not included.
Up to this point, Black folk were not part of the mainstream of the Genome Project. In fact, Howard was able, and I was able to bring that fantastic team that included Rick Kittle. It was NIH that helped me assemble that team at Howard, which included Rick Kittles, was one of the founding persons with the Genome Center. And our center was the national government's effort to engage African Americans and the Black community, if you will, in the mainstream of the genome. So keep in mind now, genomics itself, human genomics, was kind of just getting going among the genetics. And that's the reason why this lag. After all, research, you have to be able to study your subject. Doing research with humans itself is a challenge. So that's why Ph.D. programs in human research, in human genetics, lag behind other areas of genetics, because research scientists have always used and studied model animals. So we got great genetics, mouse genetics, fly genetics, every kind of model animal, because you can get your object of study. But human genetics required getting and doing research on humans. That's why that's why it was not a big area. That's why there were only 5 universities that offered a PhD. A PhD is a research degree, is a research study. And if it's in human genetics, it means humans must be your subject of your investigation. And my original questions were about humans. So I just wanted to say that ethics was 5%. It was a minimal part of the total budget for sequencing the genome, but it was there. I mean, even though the main portion of the budget was for sequencing the genome and went to the big high throughput sequencing lab, there was this small 5%, this portion that was devoted to, look, we got to look at the ethical, the legal, and the social implications. And this is the whole area that opened up investigations like that led to certainly ancestry testing blossomed, because to many people's surprise, Black people were very interested in how could we use this new science to find out something about our origins, simply because of our history and the fact that we had this disconnect. So Rick was someone who was interested in making this science available for our community. And he had a passion for starting this very program. And I clearly wanted to support all the folk in terms of what their passion was. And
I don't think anybody has you beat on passion, Dr. Dunston. No, you can't. Nobody. I'm sorry. You get the award for passion. I have so many questions for you. So you are on the front lines. You have been on the front lines of this work. You have been working with scientists. You have engaged with the community on some level. What do you think? This is not what we said we were going to talk about. I'm so sorry, but you got me going now. What do you say to everybody who's watching about why they should participate in research, and what should they be looking for when asked to participate in research? Because it's important for us to participate, but because of all of the historical issues and current day concerns, people aren't that eager to do it. You're an expert. You're our North Star. What would you say to help encourage people? What should they look for? What should they consider?
I really thank you for that question, because it's very important to me. Genomics is not your grandfather's genetics. Now, Okay.
Woo! Can you say
So
that
what I
again?
mean by that, genetics as a science has a lot of negative baggage that I understand from my working in the community that causes a lot of anxiety, concerns, fear, and it's understandable in our community. Remember, for human genetics research, I've got to engage humans. I've got to, and my interest is always in African Americans, wanting to understand myself. But genetics research has some very negative history, the eugenics movement and what have you have to deal with. But it grew out of the viewpoint of those who were making decisions about what science would be done and how that science was interpreted. Because we were not a part of the uh, thought leaders for the science, we must recognize that the thinking was reflective of those who were setting boundaries and setting details. But genetics as a science deals with and kind of focuses on looking at and finding genes. Genes are the parts that work together to give you a working, functioning human body. The genes are the parts. And as we identified and studied genes in science, we are looking at identifying the parts and putting the parts together. Now, it wasn't until we sequenced the genome, it wasn't until the genome was sequenced that the revelation, I call it a revelation, that most of our DNA, our inheritance, is not involved in making the parts of the body that we see. In fact, the parts of this genome that codes for protein, which is flesh. So I like to say the parts of our total inheritance that codes for making the parts of our body that we see, our physical body, is less than 2% of our total inheritance, less than 2%. Now think about this. When we sequenced the genome, it was found very early that the amount of our inheritance that it takes for making all of the things on the surface that we use to define ourselves, our skin color, hair texture, anatomical feature, all of the genes that it takes for us, all of the diversity that we see globally in humans, less than 1/10 of 1%.
Well,
Less than 1/10 of 1% of our total inheritance is needed to make all the surface differences that we see. Most of our sequence, we all share in common. Those things, we don't think about the things that we share in common because we focus on the differences. But my point is, everything that makes, remember, this genome is the complete set of instructions for making every part of the human body and how to put those parts together to make a working, functioning whole. Much of our medicine and most of our emphasis has focused on the physical body. It's only been recent that the knowledge of the genome has been turned to the brain initiative, and we're focusing on mental health, which is necessary. But let me just say, the biggest part of finding genes initially was finding genes for common diseases. We're talking about diseases that are very common because this was the public health interest. Genes that code for heart disease, code for cancer, that code for asthma, hypertension. Finding these genes. This is what this sequence was, to find these genes. But I'm saying to you that the amount of our total inheritance that our genome needs to make all of the differences is a minuscule part of, as I said, of our total inheritance. What am I saying? That most of this sequence, most of our inheritance, the part that we don't see, we're finding daily, even now, new systems of control and regulation. It's like most of our inheritance is what's needed, is invisible parts of our inheritance that's needed to control the visible parts, if you will. So we're finding regulatory systems and control mechanisms for how do you turn on a given gene, when it's turned on, where it's turned on, how much is turned on. All of that is encoded in the genome. The fact that you have two eyes in the front, nose in the center, all of this information is encoded in the genome. All of those things that we share as humans. So that the genome was sequenced and teaches us about biology, the science of life and living systems. Now, we came into it because it was possible to get Congress to appropriate money because there's public interest in finding the genes for disease, because this would be an avenue to be able to then treat the disease and however. But really, think about this for me, why we have to be involved. There is a reason for the genome being sequenced, I like to say, for such a time as this. There's a viewpoint other than the human viewpoint. Why not just kind of ask ourselves, let's just throw the question out, what might be God's reason for allowing us to have the wherewithal to be able to sequence this genome at this point in time? What might God be wanting to share of this tool, this instrument? Because the genome is an instrument for making and operating the human body. And I put that there because I think about Black folk not being engaged initially when the science of how we're going to find the genes for disease and the thinking was those diseases that occur in Black folk, it must be because we have the genes for those diseases. And that might explain it. So all kinds of thinking that sense doesn't hold for good science, because let me say, there is no Black gene. There is no Black gene for hypertension, for asthma, such that you study Black folk to find the gene in Black folk. There is a hypertension gene. These genes were in the genome way before humans differentiated across the globe in their different kinds of anatomical structures. These genes existed before we put names on them and made those names bad, so to speak. We call the gene the cancer gene, the hypertension gene, but those genes existed before hypertension, before we existed, if you will. So my reason for saying that is keep in mind that how we see things is a function of who's doing the seeing, if you will, first of all, and how it's interpreted. And it's why we have to be involved now at this time, because the genome is certainly a construction. Many of us, many Black folks do share a history somewhere in the church or related to people. We have relatives, ancestors that were involved in the church because of our history in America. So my point is, it's not uncommon for us to even consider the questions that I was asking. God, why did you make me Black? Especially when I see all of the things that are being said about Black folk having pathological genes for this, that, and the other. So my point is this, that the genome is an instrument that was fashioned and created by God to make the human body. And it is true, we can do good science. And this is to show that the genome has the information for making these beautiful, exquisite bodies that we have. We start from a single cell, and all the information from moving from a cell to this complex structure, all that information is in the genome. And it is a construct made by God. Now, what might be God after in allowing us to be able to sequence? Could it be that he wants us to know the truth of who we are? He wants us to know our identity. So he wants us to know that all humans are coming from the same genome. Each of us receives our genome from our parents from their parents, and from their parents. So this genome has been an unbroken thread from the beginning of humankind down to each one of us. It's an unbroken chain. We each have this creation made by God for making these bodies, and he wants us to know what he has made and how it is to operate. And one lesson that Sequence and Jadine tell us is that we are more than what you see. We are not just limited to how those who were making the decisions about how we define ourselves and who we say we are. The genome says to us how we define ourselves, how we see ourselves, what we call ourselves is information to our genome, because you have this genome that already knows how to manifest your word, how to make your word is law to your genome. We are talking to our genome 24/7, telling our genome what our environment is so that it can operate to keep us. It's about our survival. It works to help us survive in whatever the environment is. So we have to think about not only physical beings, but we are mental beings, the whole psychological environment, our whole mental health, our definition of who we are. The genome, look at it this way. I want to say that this is why we have to be involved. Just like we don't have to teach our eyes how to see, and we don't have to teach our ears how to hear. We don't have to teach our stomach how to digest food. We do not have to teach our genome how to manifest the glory of God in who we are, our bodies. And we are more than what you see. And now the Brain Project is making us recognize that we have a mind. We have a mind, and that we were made. And our scripture, which I consider a source for truth, the scriptures say we are living souls. We are living souls. God breathed into man, and man became a living soul. We are spirit, soul, and body. Okay, and we have different stories. We couldn't go into it here about spirit and soul, but let me just suffice to say, God is spirit. God made us in his image. We are spiritual beings, and we have to teach our genome the truth about who we are, because it's already crafted and made to give us what we say. In fact, that those who are familiar with scripture, there are scriptures that tell us that you will have what you say. We have to think about what we say to ourselves, because our word is instruction to our genome about what's the reality that it has to maneuver to keep us alive, for us to survive. And we survive based on what we have access to for survival. So that influences some of the differences. But there's a big area now of social determinants of disease. When the genome first started, it was like, we're going to find the problem and what's wrong with people in the gene. But the gene is not the problem. The gene is performing a function for the body that existed way before the clinical problem came up. So what I'm trying to say is that it's a time where we have the tools to study the human body as a living organism and how it works. And it's a tripart. It's spirit, soul, and body. We have focused on the body, but now we have to also put our good science to the mind, because the mind-body connection is very, very important in health. And we've got to look at what kind of food we are feeding our mind about who we are, because the genome doesn't make any judgment. If we tell the genome, you're nobody, you're not going to do anything, all it's going to do is try to find what systems it has to respond to that, because it will give you your reality. So we have to think about the narrative, what we are saying to ourselves about who we are, and think about what's the highest powered ideas and thoughts of who we are that we can talk to. And we can actually do experiments now. No, we haven't participated in a lot of the clinical trials routinely that we have been suspicious of now for good reasons. But now we have a chance. We have many bright young scientists that have come through STEM, and they got the tools, they got the technique, they got the training, and we can set up clinical trials where we can test and use good science to test the relationship between how we speak to our bodies and really then measure the biomarkers that come in the blood. We can show the relationship between stress and disease. We can show the relationship between error thoughts and truth thoughts. That's what we can use science. We can now take these opportunities that we have gotten when the open up period and use these tools to really get at the truth of understanding how our bodies work, and be able to then diagnose and treat, and yes, even prevent when we're getting complete information. And the beautiful thing about Black folk, God made this genome, and humankind started in Africa, and the first human family in Africa spread out through the whole world, and the genome shows the relationship of the one human family with all of this variation. And the significance of that is the genome shows that variation is greatest in African people. And variation is the tool that we need in order to probe and find the genes and things of interest. Variation is a tool. Variation is the way you see what's already there.
Dr. Dunston, wait. If this was church, if this was clinical trials church, I think everybody on here would sign up for, you just did an altar call, Dr. Dunston, for clinical trials. I'm like, where's the clinical trial? Where can we, and you did an altar call for supporting Black scientists and not being scared. To your point, we are producing bright, talented, top of the class Black researchers. And so we no longer have to be afraid of the narrative, because there are people who look like us who are now shaping the narrative. Did I summarize that correctly?
Yeah, I love it. Exactly. You got it in terms of why we must be involved. We've got to be involved in deciding what questions are being asked. We've got to be designed in what tools are going to be used to measure these and we've got folk across the board. I mean, if we can recruit now for a team that would oversee a trial, we could even look at what's the effect of telling our body a lie versus telling the truth, because we can even use the standards of truth, okay? And we can see what are the biomarkers that are produced. The body responds to the truth. This genome was made by
Dr. Dunston, wait. It's about 8:00, girl. We have got to stop. But will you come back? Because I've gotten a gazillion comments saying, when's Dr. Dunston coming back? When's Dr. Dunston? Will you come back so we can talk about soul genomics?
Yes.
Okay, because you guys, she's just giving you a taste. And we didn't even really, I'm not even sure how we got down. God took us down this path tonight. But I want you all to know that Dr. Dunston is in the process of writing a book called Soul Genomics. And she was about to take us there, but it's 8:00 and I don't want to lose anybody. So Dr. Dunston, I put you on the spot, but I hope we can find a time where you will come back and continue part 2 of this lecture, this this lecture / sermon about soul genomics.
I would love to, particularly with your audience, and let me say to them as we go forward and we talk about this, SOUL is an acronym for Science of Unlimited Life. And I want you to know that this same genome that makes this body, this same genome has information for making our soul, which is indeed also part of our inheritance. So, and the soul has an intelligence from the spirit that takes us way above the best of all that we have done with so far. Because, and we can do experiments, we can use good science, we can use properly powered studies to look at any question we would want to about biology, about our identity, about who we are. And I believe that Black folk have the responsibility to bring the consciousness of our spiritual nature to humankind, because that's the truth of our real power is in knowing who we are, how we were made by the Creator. The body is as beautiful and as exquisite as our body is. Our mind and the spirit that we abide is also something that we can set up experience with the advances in psychology, with the advances in brain technology. We can look at how we think influences the brain chemistry and how that influences organs of the body. We can do clinical trials, we can do experiments limited only by the imagination of our best minds. And then we can get support from our community to be participant. We'll be responsible to them. But yes, my answer is thank you for this opportunity. Soul genomics is really getting at what the soul is responsible for operating the mind and the body. That's the territory. Your soul is responsible for operating not only the mind, but the body as well. And
Dr. Dunston, how can people follow? Can they follow you? Do you have books? What people want more? They want more until you come back. How can people learn more about your work and your perspective?
Well, like I said,
this is your foundation, the Whole Genome Science Foundation. I have this posted.
I do have a website.
Okay, what is the site?
It's Whole Genome Science. It's Whole Genome SF, WGSS Inc. .org. Okay. So we have a website, and while this website is not getting right now into the soul, because like I said, that's the book, that's my number one project right now. However, I would love an opportunity to engage those in your audience who would be interested in working with me to really get an interest group to see how we bring some of our brightest people together to look at answers to some of the questions of interest to us about our uniqueness. And
so can they contact you at WGSF.org? Is there contact information on the site?
There is contact information on the site, but also my contact, I don't know if Ashlyn is still on the call, but
she is.
Let
me see.
But she has been a contact site for me in terms of interfacing right now.
Ashley, can you put in the chat if there's a way that people can contact you or contact?
Yes.
Get in touch with Dr. Dunston. If you put it in the chat, then I can post it if you're watching. If not, you all, I will make sure that I get it, and I'll add it in the comments to this post on YouTube and on Facebook. I know you guys want to keep going, but we cannot keep Dr. Dunston on here. I know she needs some water because she's been preaching, and I didn't see her take one breath. I didn't see her take one sip of water. Dr. Dunston, you are incredible. I don't know what's bigger than phenomenal. I feel like phenomenal does not do you justice. Thank you so much for who you are. And thank you so much for your passion for human genetics, and human genomics and all of what I'm saying it wrong, but for your passion for Black people, African people, our bodies, our minds, and our souls. I just want to honor you publicly for that. And if you go back and watch this, you can see all the hand claps and the fire and the flags that you're getting, that you've been getting all night as you've been talking. And I'm definitely going to work with Dr. Dunston to get her back. You can go to www.wgsf.org. That's Whole Genome Science Foundation. I also have it in the comments. I know a lot of you had questions. I'm going to work with her to get some answers to the questions, and I'll post the answers to the questions in the chat. We couldn't stop her for questions because we needed to get all that stuff that God intended for her to have for us tonight. Everybody, we are still in a pandemic. I encourage you to please continue to social distance, even though the world is opening up. That doesn't mean that we should not continue being safe. We should continue wearing our masks. We should continue supporting our mental health and that of those we love. We should continue supporting our immune systems so that we can all move freely as we were prior to this pandemic. And you can find us anytime at AfricanAncestry.com. If you enjoyed the power of this conversation, please share it. Please share it with all of your friends and followers on YouTube and on Facebook so that more people can learn about Dr. Dunston, so that when her book Soul Genomics comes out, we will be able to make it have a huge splash and the very positive impact on our community that it should. We are AfricanAncestry.com. We would not be here today if it was not for this woman right here, Dr. Georgia M. Dunston. Until we meet again, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for commenting and contributing to the conversation with your posts and your comments. And we'll be back here next Wednesday with another phenomenal woman. She got a high bar to reach, though. Dr. Dunston set the bar really high for phenomenal women this month. Until we meet again, may you be happy, may you be healthy, and may you be whole. Thank you, everybody, so much. Have a wonderful night. And Dr. Dunston, you have a good night as well.
All right. Thank you. There is an INC after the F in that website.
Let me fix that. It's
WGSFINC.org.
Okay, yes. I'm going to fix that real quick, and I will make sure that it didn't fix. Okay, well, she said it. WGSF INC.org.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully I got that. I fixed it.
And Ashlyn will definitely give follow-up information for you to put in the chat. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to do that because I'm messing it up. Everybody have a really good night. Dr. Dunston, right. I will see you again soon.
Okay. Thank
Take
you.
Care.
Thank you. My pleasure.